Hey there, it's Matt Fury from Avid here at Sundance. Yes, no, it's coming and going, but hey, who cares? It's Sundance. We're having a good time. Speaking of good times, my good friend Rob Komatsu is here with us. Why is Rob here at Sundance? Well, why not? It's a fun place to be. But Rob, you have a film called Freaky Tales, which is one of those movies that people are talking about even before the festival started. For the folks that haven't seen it, because it's kind of hard to see unless you're here, what is Freaky Tales about?
Freaky Tales is basically Freaky Tales has four interconnected stories that take place in 1987 Oakland. One of our directors, Ryan Fleck, grew up in Oakland, and a lot of the things that influenced him growing up sort of have made their way into the movie. So we're talking like teen punks versus Nazis, rap battles, the Golden State Warriors, film noir, martial arts, and 80s sci-fi movie influences, and then they're all sort of mashed up together into this sort of freaky world that Anna and Ryan created.
So Ryan and Anna just sort of took all the things Oakland and just shook it up and
Shook
dumped
it
it
up.
dumped it on your desk.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
this cool mashup.
love
So,
it.
yeah.
Okay, well, so we talked about Ryan and Anna. We should talk about how you got this job.
Yeah, well, so like I worked with them on Mrs. America as one of their editors, and we kept in contact. I was doing a show called Paper Girls, which since we were on your show, and in the middle of it, it was November 2021. Ryan emailed me and said, "Hey, when are you done with Paper Girls? Asking for a friend." So I'm like, "What's going on?" And they told me about Freaky Tales, and then they sent me the script, and I thought it was like super interesting and intriguing, but it wasn't greenlit yet.
Mm.
So we basically said like, let's just keep in contact. They'll give me updates of their status. If I get a job, give them updates. And when I was about to finish Paper Girls, I did get an offer for something that was pretty big and good, and I was like, oh crap. So I called them up and said like, what's the update now? And they said, it's looking better than ever. We're probably gonna go, but we totally understand if you need to take the bird in the hand.
Mm.
So I thought about it for a long time, and I turned it down on the faith that Freaky Tales would go. And then we started shooting almost exactly 1 year to the day of that original email.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was you put your faith on the right project because you're here at Sundance. You mentioned the four stories, and you said the
Yes.
four interconnected stories. Uh, how did you approach that from an editorial standpoint? For you, is that four individual movies, or were you actually sort of intercutting it all, or balancing the stories against one another?
Well, they were like four movies in a way, but there's a lot of interconnected details. So something that might be in the background of one maybe comes into the forefront of the other, or something that gets a little more revealed, or like gets like enhanced. And we played with structure a little bit too throughout the movie, but yeah, in a way, there are four distinct chapters.
When you mentioned Oakland, obviously
Yeah.
music is going to be a big part of that. There are iconic Oakland-based musicians. Tell me about the needle drop part of it, or just working the music that gives the vibe of Oakland into those four stories.
Yeah. Oh my God. I researched music for about 2.5 months before I started the movie. So I geeked out and made this big database. And first I was researching scores. So I listened to like so much John Carpenter, like the Thing, Escape from New York,
Mhm.
Big Trouble in Little China. Listened to Tangerine Dream, like Thief and Sorcerer, Scanners by Howard Shore,
Mhm.
and then I went into the music. So researched a ton of Dead Kennedys, MDC, Operation Ivy, and Too Short, of course,
Yeah.
since Freaky Tales is a hit song from Too Short in 1987.
Mhm.
So a lot of Too Short as well. And yeah, I mean, like we have a ton of music. Um, we didn't necessarily have the budget for it at first, and then our producers Jelani and Poppy came through, and we basically got everything we wanted. But we had so much music; it was so much work, and it was a serious group effort. I mean, just not from just me, but my assistant Kevin Pellin, and then Anna and Ryan. Like Ryan was listening to like songs like every weekend. Like, okay, what can we put in here if we're not going to be able to get this or that, or like, and plus we would do mashups too. Like there are certain sequences where we go from one song to the other.
Mm.
It was a lot of work.
Yeah, it does sound like a lot of work. So speaking of a lot of work, where were you working?
We were a combination of remote and in person. So we started remote, and then early in the director's cut, Ryan and I flew to New York, and we worked with Anna in person. And then a little later, Anna flew to LA, and we worked in person, including my assistant in Hollywood. And then later, Anna, Ryan, and I flew to Toronto for the mix and the DI.
And how did the remote part of it work? What was the setup that allowed you to collaborate remotely?
We use Jump Desktop. Yeah, yeah.
And tell me about your own editorial setup. Like, how do you like to have things set up so that you can comfortably be creative in a project like this?
Well, when I'm at home, it's pretty standard. You know, I had 3 monitors. Jump Desktop does sort of restrict you to stereo. And then when we were in person, we also added like a huge 70-inch monitor. But if there's time, do you want me to tell you what we wanted to do, but it didn't quite work out?
I don't know, do I?
It's nothing to do with Avid necessarily, but you know Jared Simon, who was John Axelrod's assistant.
I do know Jared.
Because he was on, yeah. So I met Jared, and I was like, we're gonna have to do stereo, and he said, no, this is what you do. You set up a sequence or your reels as a 5.1 sequence, but you set it to monitor in stereo when you're working on Jump at home, but you mix it like you're mixing in 5.1 or LCR. Then when you connect locally in person, you just flip the switch and say monitor in LCR 5.1, and it's like everything fills out. So I've done a 5.1 movie before, so like I had the strategies of what to do, but I couldn't. It was like mixing blind. So the plan was that when we go to New York, I'd be working with Anna and Ryan, and my assistant Kevin could like be checking all the reels and making adjustments because we never heard it in 5.1 or LCR before. Yeah. But then due to the budget, it turned out like, well, now we can't send Kevin to New York. So I popped it open and I listened to a little bit, but I didn't have time. Like basically day one that I got there, and then Ryan brought in some pastries, like, all right, let's go. You know, so like I didn't have time to like really go through and check. So we just wanted to play it safe. I mean, we didn't want to export like a quick time for a screening in a screening room that we didn't thoroughly check in that format. And Kevin technically could not because he was in LA.
Well, Rob, you're the first one to really come through as sort of like an insider tech tip, so good for you. I appreciate that.
Well, but it's Jared Simon's tip, so I wanted to make sure that
everybody home, Jared Simon gets credit for that.
Tip.
There you go. Okay, so last question, because now the snow is picking up again, and so the question I generally close these out on is, what was the most challenging aspect of doing Freaky? You know, it would really help if I put the microphone up to this face. You think after doing 30 of these, I'd get this right by now?
Oh, but and you said, like, yeah, I'm going to edit this. We're not really going to edit it.
No, we're never going to edit this. The most challenging aspect of doing Freaky Tales, what was that for you?
A couple things. One was, if you know, I can sort of mention this vaguely because it's in some of the reviews, but you know, there is like, and I said there's 80s sci-fi movie references, so we do have a little bit of that fantastical nature. Mm-hmm. Part of it was like, where do we introduce it? How often do we have it? How spaced apart do we have it? And that was like a little bit of a balancing act, you know, like we'll try here, test it out, like let's scale it back a little bit. You know, that took a long time. And structure too. We tried, you know, because it's a movie and we have the time, we really would play with structure, or just like, you know, let's take away this scene. Let's put this scene here. Let's try to put the intent of this scene over here instead. And we would like screen it for an audience, come back and see how we felt about it and change it. But yeah, it took a little while to get that balancing act.
Nice. Well, certainly you figured it out somehow, because here you are at Sundance and everybody's talking about it. And Rob, I appreciate you coming out and braving the elements to talk to me, and I look forward to talking to you again about the next Rob Komatsu joint.
Thank you so much, Matt, for having me.
You got it. So Rob Komatsu, the film is Freaky Tales. Keep an eye out for it. You know, keep an eye out for how I do in the snow. Do I freeze to death? Who knows? You're going to have to stay tuned to Avid social media channels to find out. Can't wait to see you there. Bye.